Somehow, since 2016, I've managed to amass 7,200 hours in Planet Coaster. I mean, it's more like 8,000 if you include the pre-alpha release, but Steam doesn't count that, so we can't either. But anyway, that's a lot of time to spend on a game, and I mean, it's not the highest I've seen. Some of you guys really do challenge me for that title, but you guys don't often get a chance to peek behind my Planet Coaster history, and it's quite a history as well. So I thought, why not take a sneak peek at some of the parks I was working on every time I hit a milestone? Come on, you guys, let's go. So up first is Pennington Park, and I created this during the alpha, and I had to recreate it when the game was fully released because the park was completely broken. Now there is a tour of the original one on the channel somewhere if you do want to see it, and it was kind of a fun park to pull together too. I was armed with some knowledge of Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, and this is my first 100 hours in game, so if they say it takes 10,000 hours to perfect your craft, I've got 9,900 left to go. Next, we skip forward a few months to our 500 hour park, and this is Oak Ridge Park. Now this was a park where I started to really try my hand at something more realistic, at least what I thought was possible in the game at the time, with, shall we say, mixed results, and the game was developing at about the same rate I was, so just as I had something down, Frontier would introduce something else, but with this one, you're definitely going to see a leap up from Pennington Park. So now we move on to a park you are definitely going to be familiar with. Hey everybody, it's the original Jippity Point, and this is 1,000 hours in game, and it's been developed massively by now, and Theme Maker's Toolkit is now a thing. Now this is the first park where I actually started to dabble with that. It isn't as prolific as you might see in my usual works, but just like picking up the game for the first time, you also have to learn how to use TMTK. This was my park that I did that in, and I still love it today. And on to the next park. Is a little bit of a case of 1, 2, skip a few, because we're now at 2,500 hours and a park called Colwell Wonderland. Now there have been many other parks in the middle, including a version of Shorehaven, multiple iterations of a Thought Park wannabe, and some played versions of scenarios that I had loaded into the workshop. This was my big daddy park though. This was my COVID lockdown park where I really started to test the limits of realism. This is the park where you really start to see some of the Chacho tropes come into life. Maintenance areas, path covers, all of the usual stuff. Right, now we're hitting our stride and we're only about halfway there. We're at 3,000 hours now, and this is the big one. This was the first series on the channel, and to justify my place on the Planet Coaster scene, this park had to be pixel perfect. Like literally able to pick it up and build it in real life perfect. This was the park that really would test my imagination and set the tone for all of my future builds. This, by the way, also nearly broke my PC as well. And in case you didn't know, this is Reigate Lake. And so with Reigate Lake now a thing of the past, the hard challenge was to follow it up somehow, and then it came to me, an anti-Reigate Lake in the form of a more casual style park similar to Fantasy Island and Skegness. The question here though was always going to be what this park's USP was, and it turned out to be still theming inside a dark building and more shop interiors. And now we need to skip over a few of your favourite parks to hit 6,000 hours and land in Grosvenor Gardens. And while I've got love for parks like Chacholandia, this was the park that took my theming level up to its absolute peak. You guys ask me for a Fantasia Land park all the time. Well guys, this is it. This was also my first real terrain park, and it also had an aquarium, so you can kind of see why I've chosen this one. So our penultimate pit stop on the Chacho Experience Tour is the park which saw me through to my 7,000th hour in game. It's a series where I really wanted to show how park develops through the ages, and it ended up being the longest running one of the entire channel. Literally and figuratively. Spanning from 1930 to 2023, the Royal Mile triumphed at testing my theme park history knowledge. And so here we are at 7,200 hours, which is more like 8,000 hours, going full circle by having to create a park by using no Theme Maker's Toolkit items. So that does just leave the one question: what does a park, created with just the pieces the game's given you, look like when it's built by some guy with too much time on his hands who just happens to have theme park industry experience? Well, it's Jippity Point 2.0, of course. And that concludes our whistle stop tour of nearly 8,000 hours in game. 1 man, 2 bouts of COVID, 3 jobs, 4 PCs, and a small YouTube channel charting it all. And there's a longer version of the video where we look into each park, available in the description if you have the attention span for it. Otherwise, make sure you subscribe to see the next park series, whatever that's going to be.